Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here for today's daily medicine transmission. It is Friday, March 5th, 2021, and we have a third quarter moon squaring the sun. So we are now officially in the last quarter of this lunar cycle that started with a new moon in Aquarius. We're still in that cycle. God, it feels like time is just dilated so much. That is going to end very soon, of course, as we get further into March. But Pisces time always distorts everything because water, you don't really see very clearly in the water, do you? So, happy Friday, everyone. It's Friday. There'll be some astrology coming soon about this last quarter, preparing for Mercury to move out of shadow. We have the sun is going to meet Neptune next week. So the title of today's transmission is What We Think We Know. The energy felt very scattered. Even in the last 2 days, I've had people reaching out, my own feelings as well, my own intuition, but people making comments to me about how agitated people feel, how agitated they feel. There's an immense amount of pressure that is attempting to find a place to be released. There have been incredible earthquakes. New Zealand is getting hit very hard with very high intensity earthquakes, possible tsunamis that came in. I don't even think it's possible. I think it did come in. And 49 to 50 volcanic eruptions in the last day or so. So there's an immense amount of pressure that is looking to be released, and it is finding its way because there's no way to stifle that energy forever. Nothing is able to be stifled, especially that type of energy cannot be stifled. It needs to find a release. And that is certainly what's happening. We have more solar weather coming in this weekend as well. The Schumann is, it's starting to peak again, but compared to where it's been, it's still fairly mild, considering that the Schumann resonance rests between 7 and 8 hertz. I do suspect that over the years here, we're going to start seeing a baseline that is a little bit higher than that. But this process is preparing us for that. You can't just go from one frequency to a higher one without any type, especially in a physical form, without any type of mitigation. It's just like exercise. Like if you have not been exercising or active at all and you go into the gym and you try to do this really high impact workout, you're going to hurt yourself, right? And so it's the same thing as we are preparing these physical material vessels to handle much more high energy light, right? High energy light that's coming in as our solar system moves through the galaxy and is coming out of this magnetic cloud that has been kind of shielding us from higher radiation light. And that's all light is, electromagnetic radiation. And it is on a spectrum of its intensity and frequency. And there is only just a tiny little window of visible light that we have access to. So as the Schumann does its thing, and there is a correlation between earthquakes and tectonic activity. I've talked about this many times. There's a post on my Telegram page. I think it might be on Facebook too, but it's definitely on Telegram about what it means when the Schumann does what it does, when it spikes like that, how it impacts our body. So, and there's a lot of misinformation that's being presented as fact, and as much as I want those things to be real, and it's not even about being real, as much as I believe that we're in this process of upgrading energetically and the Schumann resonance in the heartbeat of the planet, right? The field that is put off from the heartbeat of the living planet is allowing this to happen gradually to some extent. We still have to be mindful of what is so far been collected through the scientific method. And that's the beauty of the scientific method. Science is never settled. It is always an exploration and a discovery mode, always. That is the benefit of science. That is why it's so beneficial and useful is because it's never settled and it's always an exercise in exploration. Anyway, I digress. This is a topic that I get really passionate about because just like with anything, fake news and false information, and this is a beautiful segue actually into today's transmission and the overall theme here of what we think we know. So yesterday, in some ways, seemed very quiet. Didn't seem like much happened, but oftentimes when there's a distraction, hey, look over here, look over here, look over here, this thing is going to happen, these things are happening. What's really happening is over here, something quietly is being addressed outside of the attention of most people who are easily distracted with look over here, look over here, look over here, false flag. So with Mercury and Jupiter coming together in this position of Aquarius where it's becoming more and more difficult to hide our motives, the more that we are in a collective network of individuals, we are able to also connect to each other energetically. And that's the thing about this energetic upgrade and this awakening that we are all participating in on some level is eventually you can't have secrets because we all can feel each other's energy. The empathic qualities get a lot stronger. We start to exercise real discernment because our intuitive nature is being sharpened and practiced and attuned to be so sensitive. We are calibrating a part of ourselves that allows for transmission of something that you can't hide. And so it seemed like nothing was really brought to the surface, although those two aspects coming together were meant to, they presented an opportunity to expand on what maybe had kept secret. And, well, the House passed H.R. 1 yesterday while everybody was being distracted with this false flag March 4th nonsense that didn't happen at all. The House then passed H.R. 1, which essentially just it's taking the rights, regardless of the specifics in the bill about election procedure and process and what is legitimate and is what. It's taking the election rights away from the states, which is not very constitutional as far as I can tell. Each state, in fact, each county has its own election process. And so this is basically going to take all of that away on a state level. So that aspect did absolutely find itself coming right to the surface, didn't it? And as much as they wanted to sweep that under while we were being distracted with all this other shit in the news of something that wasn't even going to happen, something very substantial came to the surface. So that's one aspect to talk about. And of course, Mars is still in conjunction with fixed star Alcyon in the Pleiades, the first degree of Gemini, right? The glass bottom boat, right? We get to see into the deeper unconscious psyche, the collective psyche. We get to start exploring, right? We get to start exploring, but we also have this, and it's very translucent, but we haven't necessarily shattered through that window. And Mars really does want to shatter through that window because Mars is the god of war, and there is penetration and action and willpower behind it in order to, get at that aspect when in fact we've spent enough time with Mars and Taurus that we can spend a little bit more time, kind of holding back. And with today's reading, there's so much potential again for the blinding light and the overwhelm of this information that we could just find ourselves following a trail that's being presented for us, thinking that it is what we actually know and understand, but really it's a transference to a psyche that has not been properly disciplined and trained. And this is what the full moon was meant to show us. Where are we lacking in terms of our own internalized discipline and training? Where are we what is the culmination of everything that we have gone through so far with this new moon cycle about overcoming our passions to teach from deep wisdom? That also does apply to how are we going to move past, the spark of our passion, which is important, but not let it rule our entire sense of perception, because then we get pulled along onto somebody else's trajectory. And today with the dragon, right? The nodes of the moon are in a square to the sun while the moon is in a square to the sun. This is very karmic. This represents a crisis in our consciousness, as does every third quarter moon in a lunar cycle. And it is specifically at that degree. I will never forget this. And this is because it's burned into my memory based on my own personal life. It's the same degrees of the sun and the moon on the lunar eclipse on June 5th, right after George Floyd. This is when the riots started. This was the time frame where DC was really, this is when the church in DC was lit on fire. This was such a huge, momentous time, and people really got wrapped up in it. Right? This is the same degrees of the moon, of the nodes, the North Node in Gemini, a woman activist, right? Giving an impassioned speech, right? A very passionate response to a new experience. We're exteriorizing now what we have discovered. And since the nodes move backwards, we are also moving backwards through these symbolic representations of where we're going, where we're drawn to, and where we've come from, but absolutely is not the direction we are going. So it's very karmic. And I'm going to just show you the chart so that it visually makes sense. Okay. Here we go. So we got the moon still in Sagittarius. As I said, there's more of this optimistic lift. It also gives us a lot of fire as well to interact with today. The moon is going to be in a trine to Chiron as well. There is psychic gestation, right? There are new elements under the earth being formed. And with the moon in this position, this is really about our own internalized, emotional, personal experience of it. There is new aspects that are being developed under the surface, right? The alchemical fire of new elements being born. And in a trine to Chiron, this can really support this process of allowing for an influx of new potential to come in. And desire to actualize ourselves without feeling necessarily ashamed of it either, if that makes sense, right? There is new energy that is developing within, and we can let some of it come in without being totally overtaken by it. And the shame and the guilt that Chiron always represents is, especially in Aries, is being ourselves. Like there's shame and guilt about just expressing who we are. And part of that process is allowing in the influx of new potency and new desire. That is the cornerstone of Aries, is potency and desire. It's the territory of Mars. So there is a lot of stuff brewing under the surface. We see that there's a lot of need here to let go of tension as well, because there's so much going on under the surface, and we know. And so we have to give space to that as well. And if we do not, this is where we get into trouble, and we easily get pulled along on this trajectory when the moon meets the south node of other people's trail, if that makes sense, right? The psyche is dependent on the social circumstances and will follow along with the social circumstances rather than an individual expression of a new feeling. Okay. Now with the moon here, now I'm going to show you how we mitigate this today, because there's a T-square with the sun in Pisces. It's going to be squaring the Sagittarius moon. We see that. And then the nodes are always opposite each other, but they're all at this degree, 16 degrees. And so when we have a T-square, you see there's an opposition, and then you have a square and a square. When you have a T-square like this position, the planet or point that is squaring the two opposing aspects. This is the release point of this opposition. It's still a square, which means it's going to provide a challenge, but it does help find the balance point between this opposition. And what is 16 degrees of Pisces? This is about finding inspiration in the quiet solitude, right, of Pisces, that if we really want to connect in to our higher inspiration, that this is about getting into a space of silence and quiet and solitude. And when we can, this is prayer and meditation, right? Going into the woods, exiting the screen time, even taking some time away from interaction with other people for just a minute, and to get into a space that allows the flow of information, because the nodes in Gemini and Sagittarius are about the mind. It is about what we know and what we understand. Sagittarius, what we know is an individual experience of our burgeoning consciousness. What we understand is the result of collective values, what we learn from our relationships, and the truth that comes out of that. And when we understand something, it's because we have engaged with both aspects of a situation. This is where the Orion starseeds are really instrumental. And I've been really pressing this with my clients who have a lot of these Orion starseed markings, because the starseeds from Orion are able to, and these are markings, the nodes, right? Where we're headed and where we're going, where we're headed from, where our past is. This is a direct conjunction right here to an Orion starseed marking. And so it is these starseeds that can live within the duality, but not be of it, be able to master their willpower and take a position, not because they take it personally, but because they have done all the research, they have done all of the analysis, they have an insatiable thirst for knowledge. And this particular degree here is the moment where, after all of this discovery, we come out of it and we exteriorize it, we express it. And it takes an incredible amount of mastery of our willpower and self-discipline in order to stay in our position and face that which is opposite of us and accept it as the opposite but the same as us, but we have not coagulated yet. This has been some of the most difficult aspect, because we want unity so badly, right? We want to get to a place of unity. And this is really what Sagittarius represents to a certain extent, because it is the dissolving of the opposing elements in spiritual alchemy to create something new. This is the synthesis of understanding, and we want it, and this is the momentum moving us forward, but at the same time it is not where we are headed, and we are we're being pulled in a direction that is requiring us to master our self-discipline, to master a position without taking it personally and without hating the opposing side, because in Gemini, you recognize that it's just the mirror image of yourself. So, but this is still the dragon energy, right? It's what we think we know, what we think we understand, and we're being pulled towards this, we're being pulled in this direction that's just like, I want to express myself. I want to express this whole experience. And, with the dragon, this is it's just so intense, right? The dragon is so focused on its trajectory. The dragon is got one thing in mind. And sometimes the nodes, especially the North Node, can make us kind of obsessed with this direction. And we want to express ourselves so passionately. This requires the Orion starseeds to step up and to be able to not only master their own willpower, which means not getting caught in the drama of this situation, but also to not allow themselves to be pulled into somebody else's or the social circumstances that are a transference. It's just transferring those collective values to the unconscious person, if that makes sense. And the Orion starseeds are able to literally hold the line without getting pulled in, but also without it being personal, right? Without it being an attack, without having their own identity. This is why the solar plexus represents the energy of these Orion star seeds, because it's really about the willpower to not get pulled into the dissolution and thinking that you understand something without actually engaging with the other side fully. That is really, I mean, the Orion starseeds are masters at debate, okay? A lot of the Anons are Orion starseeds. I feel very confident that that is the case. Like if I were to do readings for anybody who identified as an Anon, we're going to find those markings, because that is what they are incredibly calibrated to do, and they are doing it. So, but the thing is, in order to mitigate this and to find some fulcrum point about this, it is about the inspiration and quieting ourselves to divine source. We're not really going to get the information that we're looking for unless we quiet our minds and we allow the flow in of inspiration through us, right? We want to be artists. We want to be creative. We want to be inspired. Well, we have to quiet our mind in order to do that. And what is what is in the pipeline for today is this crisis of consciousness here that we have to make some sense of. And this is really where we can find this, is this sun in Pisces, all right, is this quiet and inspiration, quiet space in order to gather in the flow of inspiration rather than continuing to function on what we think we know, because we don't, right? We don't. It's only the only plan out there is the divine plan, and the only timing is the divine timing. And if we can get into this space, it's really going to help us see where there's an error in the code, because there are many people that there is an error in the code. And this is why they keep struggling with what's happening and what's not happening, and not being able to see what is actually happening, because their expectation is of a certain nature and and certain events, right? And this is where disappointment comes up, because you have this expectation. So that's the astrology. There'll be way more of that coming in the future. Let's look at the reading for today, because it is not here. Let me put my face back up here so you see that I'm still a person and not just a disembodied voice. Some people do that, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. All right, so we have a reverse tower. We have the Prince of Wands at the heart of here, and we have the star card, number 17, reversed. Remember, we had the lookout, number 17 was reversed yesterday. So there is something to be said here for discovering the error in the code by being pushed out of the basket, so to speak. Now, there is, we can... And the chameleon came back too, right? Again, there's something about camouflage. There's something about being able to blend into the background. Again, the quiet nature of being in our own space is really important to get inspired, because if we do not allow that to happen and we are like facing this, reversal of a tower, which is usually just blind destruction, we don't even realize anything out of it. It's just like, Mars going off for no other reason other than, I don't know, maybe to release some pressure. Let's see, 40, 50 volcanoes, 8 on the Richter scale, earthquakes, tsunamis. This feels like tower stuff, but there's no realization behind it. But then in the heart of the moment, we have this fiery, storm of the mind with the Prince of Wands that really is just wanting things now. And so, again, it's about being grounded in who we are. It's about not getting pulled into the drama of the conflict emotionally, but to see it for what it is, to realize that we are the only ones trapping ourselves right now. And that if we allow ourselves, our higher self, if we allow that quiet and that solitude to be, if we can express ourselves, fulfill ourselves, identify ourselves with this space, allow the light in, we can really see that we're only trapping ourselves, as well as opposed to waiting on information to be presented to us that is going to give us, give us a sense that we're on the right track, because we're going to have to find it through something way deeper and more elusive than what people are telling us. That south node, and especially the moon being right there at the time that it squares the sun. This is a crisis in consciousness. Are we going to allow the social circumstances to be what drives our intuition and our psychic consciousness, our intuitive nature? Are we going to allow the social circumstances to pull us? Because guaranteed that's what they're there for. And especially in like mainstream news, social media. We saw that yesterday. Here, look over here, look over here, look over here. Oh, we're going to go do this thing over here that's actually really destructive. And nobody even paid attention to it because everybody's caught up in this false narrative about March 4th. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then it doesn't matter. Just know that the real takeaway here is that we can, if we get into the quietness, we will be inspired, and allow divine nature to move through us. And when that, and step back again, we don't have to be so like out there, even though in our consciousness, and especially in the circumstances that we are engaging with, it's definitely, pretty fiery, and the dragon fire is really strong. Excuse me. So let's look at this one piece at a time, shall we? So now we have our tower reversed. So we see the dragon, right? We see the eye is at the bottom, right? It's like the breakout and the sudden realization that the tower usually represents, and the destroying of the old, it's suppressed. Like, we're not getting full realization. It's just blind destruction because we want what we want at the heart of the moment here, and we may not be getting what we want. And so it's buried, and we have to turn that sight inwards if we want to get the most out of this sudden breakout and destroying of the old structures. We still have the dragon fire, again, the nodes of the moon being so engaged with this third quarter moon. I mean, the dragon fire is substantial, and we're the ones that are projecting the dragon fire to a certain extent, because we want to release this pressure. And it's not to say that this isn't useful and that the earth itself is not doing this already, but we are not really seeing it for what it is in this moment. And this is where we get into trouble with the nodes, right? Because the dragon fire, right? We just want things to be released. And this fits in with what we think we know, because this is the filter in which we release all of this energy through, is what we think we know. So, and here's the present moment. There's a lot of fire here. The Prince of Wands is the chariot of fire. I mean, look at this character. It's all fire. He's got a lion pulling the chariot. He's got a bird on the head of its staff, right? The prince is the air. And the prince represents us. This is us, right? This is us collectively, the Prince of Wands. We are ushering in this intellect and this fiery storm, right? Here's the dragon on those nodes, right? Here we go. Hot storm filled with action and impulsive energy. And I want it all now. I want it all now. And delays provoke outbursts. Oh boy. And I think a lot of people were hoping something happened yesterday. And the fact that it didn't, I think will also provoke an outburst, and people's perspective of reality, who they've been following, the information that they've been pulling together, that they think is truth. If it's not meeting your expectations, this is where we get this energy. And there's a lot of courage and tenacity here too. I'm not saying it's all bad, but there's a lot of storm and fire and impulsive energy that is connected to the Prince of Wands. And so when you come out of a moment here, if the cause here is this destruction, this blind destruction, the dragon fire and it's just gone awry and we're not really learning anything from it. And then coming into this moment where we're like, yes, I want impulsiveness. I want it now. This is that Veruca Salt moment, right? I want it now, but there's no mitigation now. It's just the dragon releasing. Oh boy, you could really feel it. I felt it a lot this morning. Like it's just so intense. So number 16, caught in the ruins. Now, first of all, the Tower card is number 16. So we have these two 16, 6 plus 1. This is a 7. This is that fall from grace moment that the 7 represents, the wild card moment. So they're both reversed. Now, when this is reversed, it is suggesting that this horrible situation that's confining us is coming to an end. I mean, you turn it upside down and you fall right out because there's no real confinement other than our own mind here, right? And so we can escape these self-imposed limits, right? We can escape feeling powerless. We can escape feeling like nothing is happening outside of us, therefore nothing is happening, and then getting really worked up about it. We can escape and we can hold the line and stay the course once we fall out. We have to realize that we are imposing these limitations on ourselves, and there's an awareness that that is the case. That is an awareness. And there's the release of energy from the Tower is almost part of this as well, that it's like we need this destruction to shake us up and to get us out of our slumber. But it's an internalized experience. And we do see this. This is in our conscious awareness that we are catching ourselves, really. Excuse me. Let me take a sip here. Okay, there we go. We're in charge. And it's us that are imposing the limits on our own internalized confinement. And so this is also showing us that it's coming to an end, but if we want to keep it at an end and we don't want to go back into these self-imposed limitations, we have to be very diligent about what we are doing. And again, this goes back to this position of the sun in the quiet. See, even I was getting worked up in the quiet, in the solitude, to allow inspiration to flow in, as opposed to trying to use our minds exclusively and our expression exclusively to do anything. We have to give ourselves some space and some time. So, but we can leave these self-imposed restrictions, but it's not going to come necessarily from the dragon fire. Okay. Then the Two of Roses, the winged messenger, also reversed. Again, this is really like the conflict keeps growing and we are getting pulled out of our own spirit as a result of being involved in the conflict. There's peace within us and it's all around us. We just have to engage with it. And if we, again, are not finding that quiet space to be inspired and to let divine source move through us so we can really be inspired, if we can't do that, then yeah, we're going to keep getting pulled into the drama of the conflict emotionally. And at the root of us, this is where our subconscious energy is. There's something to be learned, and sometimes you just have to walk away when there's nothing left to be done. Some people are pretty set on where they are and how they feel and their position, and if they are not willing to come to the table and fix what has been upset, then you just get up and walk away and you don't engage emotionally anymore. This is really fueling the fire of the dragon if we are engaged in it. So this is showing us that the more that we are rooted in this drama of bifurcation in an emotional way. Again, the Orion star seeds, this is where you shine, because this is where, again, the master of self-discipline, that master of willpower that the solar plexus chakra represents. It's important. It's important that we are not taking it personally. And so Orion starseeds can come off as kind of cold and logical because they don't get pulled into the drama of their bifurcation and duality. They revel in it, and it makes them better to have this competitive spirit. But they don't take it personally. So this is showing us where we are rooted right now and how it's feeding the dragon, so to speak. All right. Now, the star card, when it's reversed, even when it's reversed, is not a terrible thing. Just like with the Lookout, number 17 was reversed yesterday. You kind of get pushed out, but it's really a blessing in disguise. And this is also going to be the case, that you get pushed out. And it's a blessing in disguise. It gives you a chance to see the error in the code. It gives your higher self a chance to, it's getting, an error in our feeling, right? So even though we want it now, and there's a lot of impulsive energy, where this is headed ultimately is a chance to see the error in the code, and that something isn't quite right. We can feel that, and we know that, and it's a warning. Destructive hopes and illusions, right? This is allowing us to see what we had followed as a guiding light may have been false and destructive illusions. And it's still very gentle, right? This card is still, like I said, blessing in disguise. Just realizing the error in the code is not, so destructive. It's a gift. And the destruction has already happened with the tower coming in and the dragon, right? Again, we can really see the error and the destruction, or the destructive hopes and the illusions, if, again, we are quiet, if we are in a place of solitude, if we're allowing ourselves to be divinely inspired. And that doesn't come from just using our mind. Okay, this is really important to understand. Now, Orion star seeds are using their mind, but they are not emotionally engaged with what they're doing. Therefore, they are not being easily led around by social circumstances or specific agendas that want you to give your attention and focus to a specific outcome or trajectory. Okay, so it's a gift. You get to see what is actually up. So, light of the world, when we're caught in the ruins, right? We know we're falling out of that self-imposed limitation. So the higher self is trying to get your attention. There's the sun in Pisces again. The higher self's trying to give your attention. If you're not paying attention because you are wrapped up in the dragon fire, wrapped up in your mind, wrapped up in what you think you know, you're not going to open the door, right? And if you don't open the door, you're not going to be inspired. And if you're not inspired, then you're not going to see the error in the code. And if you're not going to see the error in the code, then it really is just destruction that you learn nothing from. And so it's important to take action by opening the door and giving your psyche the chance to, be inspired. You have to slow down and silence the chatter, which is really hard when you're on the screen all the time. I totally get that. I have the same problem. I've been meditating for decades, and it's still a daily practice for me to get my mind to get to a place of stillness. Your higher self is knocking, and if you want to stay out of these self-imposed limitations, you have to let that part of yourself in, and that's only going to come through, the ability to, instead of being conspicuous and trying to direct anything, it's about being sensitive and perceptive and blending in a little bit, and disguising ourselves. But it's more like camouflage, because we are not trying to be out there necessarily. We are giving ourselves an opportunity to blend in so that we can be quiet and perceptive. Okay, this chameleon has come out a lot. Now, when it comes to the drama of the bifurcation, right? The Two of Roses, there is a message there. And sometimes the message is to just walk away. And with the polar bears saying, stand up for yourself and speak your truth. Sometimes you have to just be like, well, my truth is I'm walking away and I'm not going to engage in this anymore. it's not necessarily no attachment to outcome. And that's the really important piece to this, is that you're not trying to change anybody's mind. You may want to express yourself passionately, but this is respectfully and compassionately with no attachment to outcome. You're not expecting to change anything for anybody else. There's a certain amount of fearlessness here. There's a certain amount of leadership here. This is very interesting. These are a lot of Lyran and Lyran starseed qualities: fearlessness, power, leadership, self-control, and strength, right? Again, and then it goes into that Orion aspect where you're standing up for yourself and speaking your truth. No attachment to the outcome. That is part of being in the bifurcation, but not of it. And not being emotionally, not engaging with the turmoil of it either. And there is wisdom and strength here. And sometimes you just walk away, or you don't engage, or you accept this is where it's at, and there's nothing else you can do about it. And so you speak your truth, and you have no attachment to the outcome because you're not trying to change anybody's mind. And this, again, it's about, there's our power player, leader. Speaking of leadership and power and fearlessness and being a provider, the King of Keys. This person is completely confident in what they're doing and what they're responsible for. Powerful leadership, nobility, strength, wisdom. This is all what we need to embody within us right now so that we can navigate through this time, because it's important, and it's important that we understand there's so much false light, and there's so many intricate and subtle ways. And when the sun meets Neptune next week, this is going to be just expanded upon so much that if we do not get this part under control, if we have not seen with the full moon what it is that we need to let go of, what it is that we have successfully done in order to condition ourselves, to train ourselves, to discipline ourselves emotionally, especially, and in terms of our intuitive nature and what we pick up on, because that is what the moon represents. If we have not done this work, and this crisis in consciousness is providing this opportunity, what are we conscious of? Are we allowing ourselves to be pulled along by the easiest psychic meal based on false illusion? Or are we heading towards a place where we are individually and passionately expressing our truth without attachment to outcome? We're not trying to force anything. It's just being ourselves. But that requires right now that we take in where the sun is and give ourselves that quiet time to be divinely inspired, to allow our higher self in, to trust our gut, okay? And not trust what other people are telling us is happening. There's only, not to say that you shouldn't listen to anybody. That's the whole point of this, is like, take it in, put it through your intuitive filter, your discernment filter, and see what it feels like. But the dragon fire is going to make this really hard. And so we have to give ourselves that space in order to sharpen our discernment and to attune and calibrate our intuitive nature and be fearless and powerful for ourselves, and exude strength and wisdom within ourselves, so that we are not just flying off the handle, and we ourselves are not the dragon fire that is destroying our relationships, destroying our associations, destroying our relationship to ourself and to source, whatever that means for you. This is an incredible moment that we should take advantage of, because again, this is why it's important to understand these cycles. Dates are important, not the dates on the calendar, but the astrological cycles that are unfolding are giving us opportunities to harness the particular energy associated with all of these connections. The cycles are an oscillation. I just talked about this yesterday. So the third quarter square itself isn't going to happen until much later tonight, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The square to the nodes, the sun squaring the nodes, is going to happen a few hours before that. So we'll already get that chance. And then the moon will come around and hit the south node, and it'll be even stronger. So we will have even more opportunity to practice where our attention goes and how we are emotionally handling situations that we find ourselves in. So it's an intense time as usual. I hope everybody is doing well. If you're interested in a reading, you want to know your starseed origins, you want to understand what areas of your life are being impacted by cosmic cycles, or if you're interested in energy work at all to just help keep your energy field balanced and clear as we go through these times and maybe get some intuitive information in the process, you can visit catalystenergies.net. That's in the description box below, and you can book a service. I have a lot of different services at a lot of different price points that are able to accommodate lots of people's situations. I want this to be accessible to people. I'm in a unique position in my life right this moment where I can make that happen. I don't have a lot of overhead. So you can find us on Facebook. Definitely Telegram is awesome. There's much more of a chat function going on there. And if you're watching this on BitChute or YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button for sure. It definitely helps get this content out to more potential viewers, especially because YouTube has really stifled creative, independent content creators in general. So it's always helpful to subscribe and to at least hit the like button, regardless of where you're watching. So that's the transmission for today, guys. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. We're all on our mission. And I'm here to help facilitate that activation. That's what I'm here to do. I'm not here to tell you, make predictions. I'm not here to tell you what is or isn't going to happen. I'm not here to tell you what the galactics think we should do, although I do have a lot of contact with my own guidance system and can share that. But I am here to facilitate the activation of your highest potential, which does lead to our highest potential, because that's what the Age of Aquarius is really meant to be about. And so I'm here for that, and there'll be some astrology coming for this last week of the lunar cycle soon enough, and I will see you on Monday for the Daily Medicine transmission. Have a great weekend, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.